Hi, I thought I would tape a quick video trying to explain to you what do I use. A lot of you guys, when you were doing your diagnostic test today, you're like, what do I use, Miss Wise? What do I use? How do I solve this? So I'm going to try to give you just a rundown. We have several different things that we've learned so far. We have learned factoring. And this is just factoring the GCF. And so this type of situation is whenever I have something that looks like 8a to the third plus 4a squared. And you're going to factor out the greatest common factor. And most of you guys can figure out, hey, a common factor of 8 and 4 is 4. So I'm going to factor a 4 out. But also, both of my terms have a's in them. And the lowest a exponent value that I have is a squared. So I can factor out an a squared from the 8a to the third, and I can also factor out an a squared from 4a squared. So I take 8 divided by 4 is 2, and then a cubed divided by a squared is just a. And then I'm left with 4 divided by 4 is 1, and a squared divided by a squared is 1. So this would be my answer in factored form. Okay? So there's another type of situation that we come to that we need to factor out a greatest common factor before we start factoring. And I know that sounds funny. So I have a situation where I have 2m squared plus 8m minus 8. And I'm just trying to make this up on the fly. So I don't know if this will work or not, but I know that each of these has a common factor, so I have to factor out 2 first. Plus 4m minus 4 before I can ever get started. So when I'm left with a situation like this, and if I'm still factoring, I need to say, hey, can I factor using the x method? And so I'm going to say I have negative 4 here, and I have a positive 4 here, and there's no values of negative 4 or no factors of negative 4 that would add up to be 4. So this is factored completely. Okay? Now, you also have a situation where we can factor and a is equal to 1 like up here, but it's a situation where we actually can factor it out. So I'm going to find some problems that I can work because it just is easier to have one that's already worked out. I have x squared plus 6x minus 40. And I see in this situation where a is equal to 1. So I can see, can I use the x factor? And I do negative 40, and I do down here, it's 6, because that's my b value. This is a times c. So what two values or factors of negative 40 can add up to be negative 6, and I'm already don't have the right ones. I need to do 10 and negative 4. So in this case, if I was asked to factor, I would say x plus 10 times x minus 4. Okay? So then the next type of situation is whenever I factor where a is not equal to 1. And this is a certain type of situation where I'm going to give you two different scenarios. My first scenario is 3m squared plus 12m plus 12. And in this situation, obviously, a is not equal to 1, but I can factor out a 3, and it makes a equal to 1. Plus 4. So I have here, I can go ahead at this point and I can say, okay, I can use the x factor here because now a is equal to 1, and I have a times c is 4, b is 4, and I have factors 2 and 2 that add up to be 4. So in this situation, when I completely factor, it's m plus 2, 3 times m plus 2 times m plus 2. Sorry. So that's another type of situation that you have. Sorry about that, it wasn't on the screen. Okay, then we have a type of situation where a is not equal to 1, but I can't factor out a common factor. So let's see when that situation occurs. So we have when a is not equal to 1, and I'm still factoring. I think this whole video is just going to be on factoring. And this is the situation where I have 9x squared minus 24x minus plus 16. And here I have no values that I can factor out. But, so I know at this point, if a is not equal to 1, I'm going to try the x with the box. And this is where I use first, middle, and last. And this is first times last, which is going to be, and I'm going to have to use my calculator, 9 times 16. And that's going to be 144 x squared. And this is going to be negative 24x. And so they made it easy on me. I have negative 12x as my factor and negative 12x as my factor. Then looking at your notes, you know that the first term goes here, 9x squared. The last term goes here, 16. And then I just enter in my factors that I found here. Go into these two squares. So first thing is I'm going to factor out the greatest common factor in columns, 3x. This column, this one is a negative, the first one is a negative that I come to, so I'm going to factor out a negative 4 from there. That would be the greatest common factor. I wanted to do 2, but then I can still factor out another 2. Then I have to look at my rows, factor out the greatest common factor for my rows. And because my 9x squared is positive, I don't factor, even though this is negative, I don't care about the second term. I'm just looking at the first one I come to. And here, the first one is negative, so I know I'm going to factor out a negative. And again, I'm going to factor out a negative 4. So in this situation, I'm going to say 3x minus 4 times 3x minus 4. And that's how you factor when a is not equal to 1. Now, sometimes you run into the situation where you can't factor using this. And so you're going to have to solve by using the quadratic equation. So, but that leads to solving and not factoring. So I'm going to leave this. This all has to deal with factoring. So if I ask you to factor, it's going to look something like this. Now, we even go a step further and you saw some questions that look like this where I had, let's say the area is 96 meters squared. And I know that the width is 2 less than the length. So L minus 2, and that's going to be the length. So you have to figure out, well, you have to figure out maybe what values L can be. So I have to say L, length, times the width is equal to 96. So I have L squared minus 2L is equal to 96. And I want all of my values on one side of the equal sign. L squared minus 2L minus 96. Now, in this situation, I have no idea. I just picked some numbers. So if we could factor, we would say negative 96, and we would have negative 2, and we would go from there and see. Or we could use the quadratic equation to solve. So that's, again, solving. This is more on factoring.